Do I just go ahead and introduce myself and say, what's up,
Yeah,
folks?
man,
right
just roll it. Just roll it
This
into
is the
it.
right angle, and I'm Alfonso Rachel with my buddies Steve Green and Bill Whittle, and I'm sitting in for Scott Ott and all that good stuff. And because I guess we don't stop rolling, we just keep on rolling. This is what I saw, guys. I saw this as a Democrat representative elect Robert Garcia will take an oath on the Constitution on a $5 million Superman #1 comic, like a vintage comic, Superman. Hey, and for a Democrat, why would you want? Now I'm asking guys, why would he want to do that? I mean, is because this is vintage Superman. The Superman that stood for truth, justice, and the American way.
That's exactly right.
Hey, let's give credit where credit is due. I'm gonna, the biblical thing aside, which I think is a total insult, but maybe this could be a step in the right direction. Truth, justice, and American way. Is that what you're gonna uphold, Robert Garcia? Am I giving him too much credit, y'all?
I'd love it if he just uphold the damn Constitution. I don't think that's gonna happen.
I remember seeing a really heroic drawing of Superman on top of like a mountain creek, like a mountaintop rather, and he's just as Superman gets, and it's like, and below that it said something to the effect of, a man sent his only son to earth in order to bring justice and peace to the world. This isn't him, and I thought that was kind of great. The thing about, well, first of all, do either of you know, are you required to take an oath on a Bible? No. Somebody did it on a Quran, right?
You have to swear or affirm, and there's no constitutional requirement for anything other than the oath itself. I think it's just really tradition that we put our hand on a Bible or a Torah.
But that's not part of the oath. It's
no, I don't think so. I mean,
it's the actual statement.
Because even the Bible itself says, "Do not swear by anything in heaven or under." It says, "Do not swear by my name." Basically, let your yes be your yes or your no be your no. That's what's actually in the Bible. But for some reason, we've made it a tradition to swear on the Bible.
Okay. I kind of feel like both of you guys, it's like, we're at the point now where things have gotten so bad that you just show me a Democrat who believes in anything, right?
I'm happy when they show up for work wearing pants.
That's a great point about it being old school Superman,
Yeah.
What did they change it to? Truth, justice, and
all that
being
stuff.
The best you can be. That was
in the Brandon Routh movie that was no good, yeah. But yeah, the new comics changed it to truth, justice, and gender queer theory.
And being the best you can be or something like that, turn it into a kind of a Nike ad kind of thing,
I actually got to do a video with Dean Cain when they decided they were going to take Superman in this new direction, or his son, right? And
Dean Cain of Lois and Clark.
Yes, and not to toot my own horn or anything like that. Even Dean Cain was like, "Yeah, I hadn't considered that, man," and I think that's pretty darn interesting. Interesting thing for them to pass up. But my whole thing was, and this is speaking of Robert Garcia, taking an oath on the Superman comic. The development of Superman, like the symbolism and whatnot, is so reflective of what was in the Bible in the first place. I mean, the creators of Superman, one, they're Jewish. So when they name Superman, it's not some syllables that they put together to we're going to call him Kal-El. Kal-El is pretty deliberate. The name El, when you're talking about, we're talking about him coming from Krypton in the house of El. El itself is the name of God in the Bible, right? So you're saying the house of...
It's son of God,
right?
basically.
And that's who Superman is. And we say Kal. In Hebrew, Kal means... like light. It also implies swiftness. So when you talk about Superman who comes to Earth, everything is light to him. It's pretty much weightless to him, and he's faster than a speeding bullet. So when they name him Kal-El, these things are pretty deliberate. And I'm like, despite these things that imply Superman, whose S on his chest turns out to mean hope, they want to go away from that narrative, and the thing that's more interesting to them is that his son is going to be gay. So I'm like, and even Dean's
what a fresh, crazy, adventurous take on things.
That's what you do when you can't actually come up with a creative character. When you make a secondary characteristic the primary focus of that character, it doesn't matter what that secondary characteristic is, color, sexual preference, whatever. That's not interesting. As I've been saying on this show for years, if the contents of your underwear is the most interesting thing about you, then you are a tedious person.
Yes.
It's just we're interesting up here. We're interesting in the things we do, not in just genetic characteristics. I don't really give a damn about those. But slightly off top, actually entirely off topic, I don't care. One of the reasons they've had so much trouble making good Superman movies, except of course for the original Christopher Reeve movie, which is basically flawless, is that Superman is so OP, as I learned from my sons, overpowered, that how do you hurt the guy? And
there's only one superhero, and everybody else.
Yeah, and
right,
and the classic combo of Superman and Batman, you have to devise a villain that is so strong that he's a challenge for Superman, but can't kill Batman, which also doesn't make any sense. But the original Superman, he couldn't fly. He wasn't amazingly strong.
He was just a strong dude.
Yeah,
yeah.
He could leap a tall building in a single bound. That was.
Isn't he holding a car over his head in the very first episode?
Action Comics number one. And some of my favorite screen Superman shows, big screen, were the old Max Fleischer cartoons, which I think were done in the early 40s or mid 40s. And in one of them, there's this the scientist has come up with this device for scanning asteroids. It's a big magnetic thing, and it accidentally starts an asteroid coming in towards the Earth. So
I hate it when that happens.
So Superman, who by now can fly, because it's the 40s, and these are animated shorts, by the way. They're just brilliantly drawn. I love them. Superman can't budge the asteroid. He flies up into space. He can't budge it. He has to come back down to Earth and get help from Lois figuring out how to operate the machine. And this is a much more grounded Superman. This is the guy I would like to see them bring back. He was basically power-wise on roughly on par with Captain America. And Cap is a deeply interesting character, and we can get that from Superman again.
I got a couple things for this. First of
all,
Zoe, I didn't know that. I learn something new from you every day. That I didn't know that about the name, the Superman name of Kal-El. But unrelated to Superman, I had a chance a few years ago to talk to a guy in the last few stages of his life, and as a kid, he had grown up in Los Angeles, and he'd hung out at all of these westerns. Right, he would just be on the property while they're shooting all these westerns in the 30s and stuff. And he talked to a bunch of people, and he told me where the Lone Ranger's name Kemosabe comes from. And I thought, where does Kemosabe come from? He said it's actually a slur, a mispronunciation of the Spanish, of the Mexicans saying, "Who is this masked man? Quien no sabe? We don't know who he is." That's what the Spanish means. Quien no sabe? We don't know. Who is this masked man? We don't know. Quien no sabe? And so that's how you got to Kemosabe, right?
Oh, that's great.
Oh, Kemosabe. Yeah, I thought that was cool. So Superman is interesting. He's the only comic book character I've ever had any real interest in. Jeremy Boring, among other people, and Jerry Seinfeld, for that matter, just worship the idea of Superman.
Same.
But the thing about Superman is he is designed to be America. That's why they say truth, justice, and the American way. When he really started to hit his stride in popularity after the war, America was unchallenged masters of the planet. And so you've got this all-powerful creature who is constrained only by his own morality. Nothing is holding him back. There's nothing that can stop him from doing what he wants to do, except for the combined wisdom of his Kryptonian father and Jonathan Kent, right? His Kryptonian father gives him all of this information, but it's Jonathan Kent that keeps Superman from going off and do whatever he wants to do.
He's a decent Midwestern boy.
He's a good man, yes, and because of his dad, right? And you're talking about the original movie being so perfect. It is so perfect. Glenn Ford played his father in that. Yeah. One of his last roles. And this is one of the most moving scenes I've ever seen in movies, and it's the most important scene ever, I think, to understand Superman. And basically, Clark in the original Superman, before he becomes Christopher Reeve, young Clark, he's the water boy for the football team, right? and all of the jocks are kidding him around, and they're embarrassing in front of the girls, and he's having to eat the stuff and so on. So these guys walk off to their sports cars, and he's left there having to clean up the equipment. And just out of a feat of bitterness and anger, he just punts the football into orbit, right? He punts it into orbit. It just disappears. And then he's so angry at this that he races a train home, right? And as he comes to his house, his dad is waiting for him, and his dad walks down there, Glenn Ford as Jonathan Kent, and instead of yelling at him, said, "I told you not to use these powers," he puts his arm around him and says, "Son, look, I know it's hard for you, right? I know it's hard for you. I know that you know that you can do all of these things better than everyone else, and you're not allowed to do it. That it's just wrong to do it." But what he says is, "Son, I don't know why you're here, and I don't know why you came to me, but I do know that it wasn't so that you could score touchdowns." Yep. And I thought, beautiful. My God, right? And you see the young Clark Kent, you see him just like, you can see it sink in, and he nods, and then Glenn Ford, walks a few steps forward and collapses and dies of a heart attack. But it's not an accident that he's raised on a farm, right? I mean, those are heartland values. That's what constrains Superman, and that's what makes him want to fight for good. He is from an American farm. That's where he grew up. He didn't grow up in New York City. He went to New York City. If he'd grown up in New York City, he'd use his superpowers for Ukrainian hookers and finding a way to get more cocaine, space cocaine.
Space coke.
But that's why this is such a brilliant character. So I guess if a Democrat's going to swear in on something other than the Bible, you could do a lot worse than old school Superman.
And once again, man, that's the implications that you're talking about. It's like you have this super being that comes from, is basically coming from the heavens. He was sent here to basically bring hope, bring a salvation. They find him on a farm where they find Jesus in a manger, the thing that animals eat stuff out of. There's all these implications, these messianic implications that these two Jews came up with that might have even gone over their head. I don't even know, right? But
some people have speculated. So some people have speculated that they wrote Superman because they needed a Jesus that was acceptable to them, that was accessible is probably a better word.
Yeah, and I could totally get that approach. And bringing that back to Robert Garcia, I think his name is Robert Garcia, swearing in on this comic with the Superman that was raised on these values and whatnot. Once again, I'm hoping it's like, is that the Superman that you're talking about? That Superman who was raised on these heartland values, the Superman that believed in truth, justice, the American way? Or are we talking about you swearing on this comic book according to like what Bill Whittle is talking about, in that, you have basically all this power at your disposal. You can basically do whatever you want. And you're going to make a mockery of our system by swearing on this Constitution as an affront. I mean, on this comic book as an affront to our Constitution, that is supposed to be the thing that is supposed to restrain people of your office from doing what it is that you're going to do. You're going to have all these resources at your disposal, and these constituents are going to back you to do things that are going to intrude upon our liberty under the guise of fairness and all that sort of stuff, by basically being unfair to other people. That kind of thing, y'all. I don't want anybody in office with a Superman complex like that. Can we start voting against these people?
I think we ought to send him. Think we should send this guy a T-shirt that says WWJD, right? And it stands for What Would Jonathan Do? Right? If you're gonna take a guy away from the religious source of this, and he is that kind of a Superman fan, then I would simply say to him, congratulations, your values are fundamentally in the right direction anyway. If you decide you're looking at a bill, try to figure out what Jonathan Kent would do.
And let me add on to something that Zoe was just saying. I've always been a big fan of Earth 2 Superman. Back in, I guess it was the 50s, they had, DC Comics split off to try and to kind of explain away the Golden Age superheroes that were, now that there was in the Silver Age and a lot had changed. They took all those Golden Age superheroes and said there was a multiverse, and those Golden Age ones are on Earth 2. And they always showed Earth 2 Superman as older with a lot of gray hair, and he was a lot less quick to action. He was tempered by wisdom and experience. And that is a Superman. That's a Kal-El that if politicians really needed somebody to emulate, don't be so quick to action. The law is about as close a thing to permanent as we can imagine. Trying to get a bad one repealed is just about impossible. Don't be so quick to action. Use your wisdom and experience in trying to avoid these crises instead of trying to lock them in with the law.
Amen.
Let me just chuck one more thing in here, because I know some of you know this story, but some of you don't. I'm 10 years older than Steve, and I'm 40 years older than Zach.
Like the kid brother here.
So I was just old enough. I was born in New York City, and that's where we had a black and white TV. So I was just on the tail end of people who grew up on the George Reeves Superman, the TV Superman.
I grew up on him on reruns.
Yep.
Oh, okay, so you know what I'm talking
yeah.
about, right? So he was Superman. I used to have a Superman doll, fly him around.
I used to have
and
the
stuff.
intro memorized. It was the first voice that I ever
Yes,
practiced
that's exactly
as a kid.
right. Exactly right. And this is a true story. So George Reeves took this role very seriously, and so did the Lone Ranger, who's Clayton Moore. Both these guys went out into the real world and couldn't shake, and so did Adam West, for that matter. You know, they just lived this character forever. But George Reeves was at a public event. He was like opening like something at Palisades Park or something like this. And there's a fairly large group of people there, and he's in his Superman outfit. And this little kid walks out of the crowd and points a gun at him, a real gun. And the kid says, "Superman, I brought the gun because I know that you're bulletproof, and I just want to show everybody that that you can deflect bullets." And George Reeves is thinking on his feet, man, because that suit's not going to do much for him. That kid fires that round, he's going to die. He says, "Johnny, that's a great idea, but I want you to hold on a second, because the problem is that if you fire that gun, those bullets will ricochet off of me and hit some of these people in the crowd, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to hurt anybody out there, you know." And I remember hearing that story and thinking, my God, that may be the best ad-lib line of all time, you know?
That's tremendous.
Yeah, that's the
He's a good guy.
That's and what a not only is it quick-witted, man, it's practical. It's just a practical thought to defuse the situation, and the simplicity of it. You know, didn't make it complicated or anything like that. The cornerstone of genius is simplicity. You know, and so if this guy who's swearing on this Bible wants to come in, or not the Bible, I guess the comics are a Bible to him, wants to swear on that and use his office to come in and make new laws, it's like, man, you doing it wrong. Your job isn't to go in there and make a bunch of new laws or anything like that. You got to know when to leave well enough alone, man. Your job is to go in there and protect our God-given rights and leave it alone. So, folks, that's the kind of sanity that we're trying to promote out there. So I hope if we see you over at BillWhittle.com, so you guys support the right angle and, help get in the way of this craziness that's out there. Bye.